thank you all for coming. I know there are delays on the red lines that may have been a pain in the butt to get here. I appreciate you guys still coming out. Quick question by show of hands, who was at their first meeting of our group? Excellent. All right, so nice mix. For those of you who have not been here before, the DC Ruby Users Group is an opportunity for people in the Washington, D.C. area to get together and learn and talk about Ruby, Ruby on Rails, related technologies, and to socialize with like-minded folks. We have typically 2 presentations. Today, Jim and Dane are going to give one, and then Nathan's going to give one. We have, afterwards, we go together to a place called RFD, which is that 7th? Up 7th Street, like 2 blocks, for some beers or sodas or whatever is your thing afterwards, to, you know, socialize and chat. Quickly want to thank, before we get started, I want to thank Logic, who are our hosts, who provide this space for us every month. Is anyone from Logic here? Yeah, they're busy working. Alright, so Logic is...
Thanks, Logic.
Thank you guys. Logic is a e-discovery firm for litigation support, which basically means they write software to go through documents and find the parts that are useful for trials. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Intridia. Chris, do you want to say something, or I can give a brief spiel? Intridia is our founding sponsors. They provide the pizza and soda, and the projector, and they are a DC-based consultancy that does Ruby on Rails and mobile development. I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, my name's Joe Grossberg. I work at a company called SB Nation. We are a sports blogging website up by DuPont Circle. We're also a Ruby on Rails shop, and we are hiring. So if people are interested in finding out more about that, please come find me afterwards and let me know. In a similar vein, quick show of hands, who here is also looking to hire folks? All right, I guess we'll just start and go that way. Just briefly introduce yourselves, say a little bit about your company and what you're looking for. And folks, if that sounds interesting to you, please find these people afterwards and talk with them about the opportunities. We'll start with you.
My name is Matt Gerke. I work for a brand new startup called Skeptive.com. We're a company that, well, the 10-second spiel is we fact check every sentence on the internet, essentially. And so it's sort of the same way spell check. What spell check does for spelling, we do for fact checking. If it says Barack Obama's a Muslim, it gets underlined in red. We're looking to hire our first full-time coder. So talk to me if that sounds fun.
Awesome. There was another hand right over here. Yes, Anna.
Hey, my name is Andrew Zalata. I'm working for Campus Flash, and right now we're working on a Q&A website for education. So basically we're trying to do for education and high school students what Bora is doing for the more technical field, and we're looking for a full-time Ruby on Rails developer.
Awesome. Patrick,
My name is Patrick Peak. I work for a company called Browser Media. We're an interactive web agency. We're hiring for a new client project which has some pretty interesting geospatial and geolocation type stuff. So find me afterwards if you're interested.
Josh, work for a company called Optoro. We have an e-commerce website, blink.com. We sell stuff from the liquidation market, versus logistics. We do a lot of e-commerce, a lot of big statistics, a lot of data analysis, a lot of Rails, and a lot of JavaScript. Not necessarily all in that order. We're looking for our 6th. Small team, exciting. Talk to me.
Cool. Aaron.
Aaron Battalion, Living Social. We're located right down the street. We do a lot of Ruby, do a lot of Rails. We sell stuff too. So come say hi to me, Dan, Paul, Min, Nathan are speaking. Come say hi. We're always hiring smart people, either you, your friends. Say hi. Thanks.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Gallagher. Over the last year, on an unscheduled career hiatus, I test drove the development of a web service in the investment space. It's pretty close to being complete as far as I see. I'm looking for somebody to help me polish it up and pitch it to companies for sale. So if you have general interest, if you want to contribute some Sundays and you think you might like to speculate about a nice payoff, I think please come see me in Gallagher.
Awesome. Yes.
I'm Billy. I've been working on a web project, independent music project. And pretty much like we have a team right now looking to add a few or at least one, maybe a few developers to our team to finish up and get it ready for our launch for beta.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else before we get started? All right. Then without further ado, we will start with our first presentation. Jim Zane, take it away.
Out of here.
Oh, sorry, before they get started, does anyone have any non-Java related announcements? Yeah.
So we're actually starting a Cocoa Heads chapter in DC. That's for iOS developers. Our first meeting is going to be August 4th at Living Social headquarters. So I just started announcing it. And it's going to be on continuous integration in iOS. So if anyone's interested.
What is it called? Something?
It's called Cocoa Heads. The website is cocoaheadsdc.org. Twitter is cocoaheadsdc. We're just getting started last week, so some things went up here.
We recently started an Arlington Ruby group too, so we're having our next meeting next week. It's right out in Clarendon Metro, so check it out, arlingtonruby.org. So this is about being a good Ruby citizen. Dane and I'm Jim Gay, this is Dane Harrigan. We're working on a project together, and some of the approaches that we've taken to working with the code that we've used and the code that we've created, we've kind of gone into the philosophy that we're talking about in this. So we want to encourage everybody here to use and contribute code like you give them.
So why are we giving this presentation? Because I love talking to people. I think it's awesome. Now, everyone has worked with Ruby. I saw a few hands in the back that this is their first time here. Everyone that raised their hands, they have worked with Ruby, is that yes?
Yes.
All right, so would everyone consider themselves to be a member of or a Ruby citizen rather? Not saying good, but a Ruby citizen.
Yeah.
Okay.
One. That's one.
Excellent.
Anybody else? Two.
We've
All
got
right.
2 Ruby citizens so far.
So far. This is the audience. All right. There we go.
Okay, great.
Take his passport.
How many of you think you are good Ruby citizens? Okay, we've got 1 so far.
One.
We've got 2 citizens and 1 good one.
Out of the 5 that raised their hands, that's Ruby.
20%. Okay, so that's why we're talking about this, because I'm sure all of you are good Ruby citizens, but now you get to know why.
It's not a dancing Does anybody know this quote? Step out of the way. I thought for sure somebody would know this quote. What is it? No, old school. Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies. But I put it up here because contributing to open source or managing open source and just using code can be kind of chaotic. So this quote comes from when they decided that they landed on this island. They needed to make some rules for themselves. And I think this is actually how Dr. Nick grew up. He was on the island.
Sorry. All right, so rules. We code in Ruby. You can monkey patch the shit out of anything, so rules don't really fit Ruby, I guess, but Dr. Nick has 8 of them. So you get annoyed by a defect or a missing feature. So who here has used a gem that did everything except one thing they were looking for? Awesome. Were any of those gems mine? All right, so one of the 8 steps. Okay, if that is the fact, then find the source. Right now, almost everything is on GitHub. Every now and then you'll find something in Subversion or Google Code, but I only look on GitHub. So to find the source. Now check it out. Put it on your computer and snoop around. Just dig through it. Some of these gems, they have a shitload of code. So cut out your weekend and just dig around. Find where that feature might be missing. Make some changes. Hack on it. Just throw things at it. You can break tests. That's cool because you're working with it. You're getting familiar with it. Refresh the code from the repository. If the person has made any updates, then rebase it, and hopefully fix the tests. Create your patch, and this is key. So if you fix the test before you make the patch and submit it, they might accept it. So we've got 8 steps.
So I think this is too many. I think we should kind of simplify this. Dr. Nick could have kind of consolidated it. So let's kind of clean the slate. How about 5 steps? Right, 3 less to do. Get annoyed by a defect or a missing feature. Everybody, well, not everybody, maybe half of them raise their hand about that. Find and check out the source. We can consolidate that to 1 step. It makes it a lot easier. Create a branch and write failing tests, right? You're pretty much going to do that all in the same step, write your failing tests. Write the code to make your test pass, and of course commit it, and then publish your code and submit your patch. That's pretty much the steps that you need to do, right?
Well, I did this. Has anyone else done this? Awesome. And now, is anyone else with me that they did exactly this and their code didn't get accepted? All right,
Yes.
sweet.
Nodding heads. Okay, that's fine. Let's do maybe one more. That kind of polishes it up, right? So now you're done, you're ready, you can go be a good Ruby citizen, and I think we're finished here, right?
I don't think so. I don't. All right, not me.
Oh, all right, fine. Well, I think then you should own your code. This is a phrase that we use often when we're working with our own code that we've written or someone else's code. And so first you probably wonder, what do we mean by that? Well, there's a few steps. Get familiar with it, take responsibility, don't ask for permission, and take care. So firstly, ownership is the legal right of possession, right? You own it, and if you bring it into your project, it's your code. I think a lot of times people, I'm going to bring up Dr. Nick again. I saw him tweet about how he didn't want to see crafting Rails applications book. He wanted to see slapping Rails applications together book, which is often what people do. They just, I just need authentication, I need that, it's just slapped together. But by doing that, you don't want to kind of shirk the responsibility for actually bringing it in and managing it. You've got to know that code. So what do owners do? Anybody volunteer an answer? What do owners do? Something they own.
Take care of it.
There you go, take care. They take responsibility for it and take care of their possessions. So that's important. We've always been talking about owning your code. So the first step is getting familiar.
So, how do we get familiar with the code? The step that's not here is get pissed off at it. But the README. So, who reads the README of any code, any gem that they look at? Awesome. Does it stop there? I've heard one no so far. Now, after you read the README, do you read the code? Do you dig in and see what it's actually doing behind the scenes? Okay, fair enough. And what about the tests? Who actually wants to read through the tests?
Depends.
Depends on what?
Some people's tests are pretty terrible. I mean, like, they test well, but they're not easy to read.
Okay, fair enough. But you know they're not easy to read because you just don't read them.
Well, the first one is close.
All right. And then you go back up to number 2. You just go back to the code. All right, so then, now if it's a bug, who reports the bugs? And do you look over that bug list before submitting maybe a duplicate or maybe something similar, but not quite, something you can contribute to. All right, I see one hand, one in the back. All right, I see 3 hands so far, so this is good. To-do notes. Who reads the to-dos? Okay, so you guys like to spend time on stuff you're not getting paid for?
No, I need to find out whether they're going to do it or not.
Okay. No, that's good. And now what about forms or mailing lists?
Yes.
Like Google Groups, you know, jumping in there and seeing have people talked about these issues.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Excellent, excellent. So, so we're trying to understand it. Trying to understand if they're bugs, or rather, do we consider these things bugs or missing features? Is that intentional? Does it steer things away from the direction that they actually want the code to go in? So these are things that ideally or hopefully you can pull from reading the code, reading the to-dos, the reading the test, seeing what is covered. Is it intentionally not there?
So now you know, you can take responsibility. But what you do with that, you got to now use your knowledge. You've read, you understand. So actually go and identify and report the bugs. Or report features that you want. I've heard people complain about this gem or that gem or this application or that application and kind of leave it at that. Even if you think you're not going to use it, it would be helpful to the person who's working on it, who maybe is less experienced than you. They might benefit from a tip, or other people in the community might benefit from you just providing that feedback on the project. If you care about it, write tests for the bugs. It's okay if you write a failing test and submit a patch, say, hey, I don't know how to fix this, but I can show you what's wrong. Or for features as well, even if you don't know how to implement it, that's fine. It's helpful to just say, this is what I want it to do. This is the best that I can do. Help me figure that out. And then if you can, of course, write the code and add the features.
All right, so we got a bunch of people in the audience. How many people, by raise of hands, please, do you think that we're just talking to you? That's it. Okay, so we actually practice all of the shit that we've been preaching. So who can read this? Okay, 5 or 6 people can read it. It's Chris Epstein. So who knows Chris Epstein? Okay, we've got one person. Now, Chris Epstein, he works on SAS and the SAS Rails gem. Now, who?
Does everyone know what SAS is?
That's a good question. Yeah, who knows what SAS is? Okay, we got
5
more
or 6
hands.
people. Wow.
Excellent. Who's worked with Rails 3.1? So whether you like it or not, you've had SAS thrown at you. So, I follow Chris on Twitter. I met him at RailsConf, and just awesome guy, absolutely awesome guy. So at one point on Twitter, he said this: anyone want to try their hand at integrating SAS logging in SAS Rails? So right before this, he updated SAS to just have a logger. All it would do is send a message to kernel warn. That was it. But SAS at that point had logging. Now SAS Rails, it would just leverage the default SAS logging and just send it to kernel warn. So that's what he asked. Just put it out there. And he's going to spend time with his daughter. Now, did anyone read this message? Does anyone remember the message? Okay, I remember the message. So now we're going to go over those 6 steps. So get annoyed by a defect or missing feature. So SAS Rails doesn't use Rails logger. It was identified, he pointed out what the missing feature was. Okay? So find and check out the source. It was up on GitHub. That was perfect. So forked it and pulled it down. All right, so create a branch and write failing tests. Okay, tested. It does not use the Rails logger. So I wrote the code to make it pass and committed it and sent a pull request. I was done. I was feeling great. Okay, I submitted the patch. Now I was feeling great. I was feeling double great at this point. And it wasn't accepted. I prayed. I absolutely prayed. So after I prayed 4 or 5 times, we chatted for a bit through AIM, if anyone still uses it. So we chatted on there for a bit, and he said, okay, well, you answered the problem that I expressed in the tweet, but there's more to it. There's more than 140 characters worth of work to do. So what he wanted was, he wanted it to, by default, push to the SAS or to the Rails logger, but he also wanted you to have the option of overriding it with or in an initializer. So by default, okay, uses Rails logger, but if you want it to go somewhere else, just define it. My code didn't do that. It just overrode methods and everything went to Rails logger. All right, so worked in the rail ties, set a default, and now you could override the SAS logger. Then it got accepted, second time around. So I did all the steps. The praying part did not work, but I talked to him. Again, awesome guy, made the updates, prayed a little bit more, and then it worked.
So this is my actual first foray into providing something for myself and then also others. Have anyone here used Access Tree? One hand. Does anyone know what Access Tree is?
It plants trees.
Yeah. So this is a what's now a gem, but it was a plugin to just allow you to create a tree structure in your active record database. Very simple. But it was a plugin. And it wasn't a gem. This was back in 2009. So that annoyed me. I needed it somewhere, and I didn't want to have to install a plugin. I just wanted the gem. So I found the source. It's pretty easy to do. It was when everybody had started moving stuff onto GitHub. And then creating a branch and failing tests. I wasn't quite in that area of my expertise at that time, so I just kind of hacked on it, made changes, and figured that's good enough. And then I would look around and see what other people had, and that was as good as me writing tests and committing code. I figured that was fine. And then I didn't really do anything beyond that. I just kind of made it and put it out there. And what was fantastic at the time is GitHub built the gem. Does anybody here remember when GitHub built gems? Yeah. Has anybody not built a gem on GitHub? Okay, so most of the people who don't remember also did not make a gem. All right. It was great. Ruby gems was kind of difficult to manage at the time. Getting a gem out there was actually kind of tough. There were a lot of people who were starting up their own gem servers. And GitHub just came along and said, oh, well, you go ahead and namespace your gem. It'll be your GitHub account name and then the name of the project, and we'll build it for you. They eventually got out of that. Along came Gemcutter, and now the Ruby gems that everybody knows and loves. But what was great about this for me is I just looked at this. And it was 2009 when I did the work, but this is about where it looks now. Rails is up here, and this is the current point in time. Looks like June something. There's not a single commit in Rails. So it's ripe. Someone else could come in and do that. But I got people emailing me, thanking me for making it a gem. And all I did was kind of do a little bit of code and pull in some other people's stuff.
So the moral of both of these stories is don't ask for permission. In my case, Chris made a tweet. I didn't write back till it was done. I just jumped in, forked it, broke it, prayed again, got it in. But I didn't ask. I just jumped in and did it. And same case with Jim. He just wanted a gem, so he stole a bunch of code and put his name on it. And I mean,
people thanked me. I got emails. People said thanks for doing that.
So don't ask for permission. If there's something that you want to do, you see a need somewhere, you just do it. And it allows you to be a leader. In my case, maybe not so much. Someone made the request, so I was following the request. Jim's case, he actually was being a leader. I guess leaders steal.
Yeah.
but we were able to do it. Again, we didn't ask for permission, we just jumped in, led some type of path and code, and we got it done.
So a good way to be a leader is to find other people's commits. I know all about that. Read code from other people. It doesn't just have to be your code or the canonical source for it. Go out and look at the commits that other people are doing. Leave comments on them. You know, if you think something ought to be done a certain way, or you were impressed with the way they came up with it, leave that feedback for other people. And then pull them into your own. It doesn't, the libraries that we use don't just have to be from the canonical source. You know, if you're going to be a leader, it's okay to go and find solutions from other people and put it together. Eventually it might go back into the main source of that code. Just be a merge point for ideas. If someone else has another idea for something that's good, make it happen. Go in and pull code together. I love the GitHub network graph. The thing that really made me love GitHub was not really Git, even though Git is fantastic, and the more you use it, at least for me, I realized how bad Subversion was. But it was the network graph. You could see really easily what people were doing. You just mouse over these little dots and you see commit messages there that pretty much tell you what's there. You click on it and it pops up and shows you a diff of what they did in that commit. That's just fantastic, and it's really easy to go around and find the network graphs of the projects that you like or the projects that you don't like and think ought to go in a different direction, and just read the code, read what other people are committing. Sometimes you see, like in that access tree graph, that people want to take it in a totally different direction and the original developer is asleep at the wheel. So definitely look into the network graph. Make it a regular thing that you do when you check out a gem, or anything else for that matter. So how do I take care? This is the last piece of owning your code. Go out and discuss bugs with others. Talk about it with other people that are interested. You know, on the mailing list, with the person who made the project.
Discuss goals and directions with others. So again, like when I talked with Chris, what did he need, or what did he see a need for? Where does he want the code to go? And we got it done.
You can advocate for mutual benefit too. I mean, sometimes people who are so focused on the one thing that they're using might not recognize the needs of the community. That's fine, you know, if you make a project or someone makes a project and they only want to do one thing with it, but you can take it and turn it into something else, and you can do that to better your situation, your team's situation, or that of others as well.
Ensure a bright future for your code. Whether you like it or not, if it's in your project, it's yours.
Read and respond to the mailing lists. That's really important. A vibrant community will help the project along, and you kind of have to have less responsibility if you have an active community. So if you're helping others, the likelihood that someone finds a bug and fixes it before you get to it are a lot greater. So go out and be a part of the mailing list.
Yeah, remember the newbies. They steal. But help them out. You know, if they contact you with a question, they're eager to get involved. So make that as easy as possible.
And teach. Come and do presentations here. We need them in Arlington Ruby. There's Baltimore nearby. There's lots of different places to give new developers an opportunity to learn something from you. You don't have to be an expert in it. You could steal code from other people and claim it as your own and get thank you notes. So just help everyone around you, and they'll eventually help you.
So in closing, to own your code. If it's in your project, if you're using it, it's yours. So with that mindset, how many people own Devise?
All right.
Go.
Oh, yeah.
2 people. I own it. Inherited resources.
No love.
So, but if you use it in your project, it's yours. You need to know it. If there's a problem, try to get involved. So again, get familiar, take responsibility, don't ask for permission, and take care of it. So, try to spread some love on GitHub.
Use and contribute code like you did Give a Damn. Other people appreciate it. You'll be happier with your code, and you'll learn a lot more too. So,
Thank you guys.
you guys have any questions?
So who has questions? Any questions, comments? Yes.
Hey, I have a question. So if you're working like on a project or something like that, how much of your code do you decide to put on GitHub, for example? How much do you share?
I mean, you have to decide that. And, I was talking with people that were on to Ruby about a week ago, and the topic came up of not being able to publish code because your bosses tell you that it's proprietary, you'd be giving away your IP, and the investors will walk away. You just kind of have to figure that out. And for something like that, if it's just a simple way to manage something, open up a anonymous GitHub account and publish it from there. I don't think anybody really cares if they pull in code. I don't think anyone's boss is telling them, no, you've got to write every single line of code. It's fine if you pull in someone else's code. They don't have to know that it's actually yours. But if it's proprietary, then and it's like core to your business, don't let it go. But if you're just tooling around with something and you could actually benefit by having someone else's help. Anybody else?
Any other questions, thoughts, feedback?
How do I be a bad Ruby citizen?
Bad Ruby citizen. That's a good question. I think Dane knows.
Oh yeah. If you try to compete with either of our CMSs up here.
I'm already a bad Ruby citizen then.
All right, so we get to do a Ruby citizens arrest over here. Okay, to be a bad Ruby citizen, if you see a problem, you go on Twitter and say, this gem sucks. And then you go on Google Plus and say, this gem sucks. That's not helpful. So don't do that. Anybody else?
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys again.
I didn't know I was supposed to have a teammate, but this is me. Well, let me ask my name. But, yeah. I hope the contrast works out because I have some code, so if it doesn't, then I'll just skip right over it, right? But yeah, so I'd like to talk about Sinatra because it's really cool. Hey, why is that? Okay, but probably just got bumped. All these things.
That's too big.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, really? That's fine.
Do you want to
I don't know. Okay, we will find a resolution. Oh! Wow. Nice. That was amazing. Okay, yeah, that might work, right? It's kind of crooked, right? Okay, yeah. So Sinatra's really cool because it doesn't really do anything, and I like things that don't really do very much. Because I find that the more something tries to do, the more I hate it. Because then I want to do something else. I don't know if you've ever had that happen. The Ruby gems, like you said. Snatchers is just basically based on the HTTP verbs. So if you don't understand that, then you should learn that. I think a lot of people who build websites have no idea how HTTP works, right? And you should. You really probably should. You can create your own framework if you want, which I do a lot. You can just collect all the gems you want, throw them in. You can put on Heroku for free, and now they have the new thing where you can actually have 2 processes in one, right? So you can actually have a website that doesn't get stuck when somebody's uploading a file for free. So that's really cool, right? I do this all the time. I emailed him and apologized, actually, because I was like, I have like 40 apps for free. Do you mind? And he was like, no, don't worry about it. So, that's nice. Called Pertinent, which is really strange, because it's like they're trying to take Sinatra and make it do what Rails does, which seems such like a bad idea. But you could look into it. Pertinent is kind of like a Rails light, kind of like I guess Merb was, except it's very, very modular. Well, I guess Merb was either way. Some examples of some Sinatra apps. I made a wiki called Hickey because it sucks. There's also some other stuff on my GitHub account. There's this thing called So Nice. The RailsAPI.com is actually Sinatra, which is ironic, maybe. I don't know. I feel like most people mess up what irony is. I forget that. There's also this GitHub high scores that will tell you like how you're doing as far as your performance on Git. And then there's the calendar about nothing, which was made a while back, which is really cool. We should look at that. But either way, there are Sinatra things alive and well, and they look like this. Hey, the code's really cool. Okay, so this is a Sinatra app. Obligatory, right? Hello world. If you don't understand this, then you should go read a book about Ruby. And after you do that, then you can come back. So you require the Sinatra gem, right? And then the get verb is saying that when you get a get request to the path slash, right, you're going to perform what's in that block. And whatever you return in the block is what gets sent back. So there's no more double render error, right? You can render 100 times and no one cares because what you return is what gets sent back, right? That's really nice. You can return a file, right? So whatever you want to return, put it in there. So the browser would actually get back a string, and you can run this just by going ruby site rb, right? And it'll do that. You probably want to run it in like Passenger or whatever else, right? So you'll need to config.ru. You have to require your file, and then actually whenever you do get, it actually takes your block and copies it into a class called application, so that you can run it, right? Because when you're using rack, you have to give it a class, right? That responds to things call, right? And so it creates that class for you and copies all your stuff into it. But that's 2 files, right? It's really normal. So just put it all in the config.ru, right? Why don't you just put it all in the config.ru, and you're done, right? Now you have your whole app, and you can actually deploy this to Heroku, right, for free. And there you go. So yeah, I mean, and I'm sure they would really appreciate this. Or you could actually use Passenger on your local machine, or POW, right? POW is a new thing. Remember to use that. You should look into it. But yeah, so just remember this, every wrap-up file has to have a run somewhere in it, right? And usually probably at the end, because I'm pretty sure it stops there, but I've never tested it because I'm too scared. But either way, so you might want to do some templates. So I've done that now. You can actually have a template in your file, right? And all you do is you just create a string. And I'm using %q. And I've been asking around, like, do you guys know what these things are called, these little shortcuts? Because I learn them because I see them online, and I'm like, what the crap? But it'd be nice if there was a list. So please, I'm not gonna do that, but someone, I'm serious, we need a list, because there's like %w, right, which is great. But either way, %q means that it won't interpolate, which is great, because you want ERB to do the reading and interpolation, right? You don't want to do it, you don't want to automatically put time in there that it's booted, right? You want to put the time that's requested. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the big Q, it does interpolation. And I figured that out by accident, right? Because no one has made a list yet. But you really need to do that. There you go. So inside here, there's an ERB method, and you give it a symbol, and it matches, right? And it renders it, and there you go. So that's how you do a template. You can have helpers. There's a helpers method, which is aptly named. And this actually does exactly what Rails does. This copies into a module and then includes that into your Sinatra application class, right? So if you don't understand what I just said, then go get a book about Ruby. But you should be good to go. I always have these helpers in my Sinatra apps. I like to set the title of the page, and I like to be able to render partials, right? There's no partial renderer by default. And I get tired of typing layout false. So that's basically the only reason I do this. Yeah, and so then, wait, there you go. So I can use my title helper anywhere that I'm inside a block that's getting, run in response to a HTTP request, right? You guys can't see me. This is great. I'm like right in front. Okay, but either way, there you go. And then I could use a layout template, which Sinatra is actually smart enough that if you have a layout template, it will wrap it around a regular template, right? Just like Rails. And here you can see my little instance variable. And you yield just like Rails, right? And then here is me using my partial helper, right, to render the time partial inside the index. Right? I thought about using Haml, but after the response I got at work from mentioning Haml, like I decided I went back and redid all this because they looked at the Hickey Wiki, funny, right? It's all in Haml, so and they I think Doug March was looking at it and he just got really upset. Yeah. So this should look good to you. If it doesn't, then I don't know. But so that's awesome, right? Okay, so what I was going to talk about then is to actually make something that might be useful. And I called it unfurler because what it does, you give it a short URL and it follows it and tells you where it's going to go, right? That's cool. But then I thought like it's cool to like have a short URL that goes to a short URL that goes somewhere, right? So it actually follows it all the way. It's so cool. So in case you don't know what a redirect is, right? A short URL just sends a redirect back to the browser, and what that means is it's an HTTP request, or a response, I'm sorry, that has a status of either 301 or 302. Apparently there could be a 307. I have no idea what that is, but I learned about that yesterday. And it'll have a header that says location somewhere, and your browser actually reads that location and follows it. And so what I was going to do is make something that reads that location and follows it, right? Just like a browser, except not a browser. So you can do that. If you had submitted a request and got back a response into a variable, right, we could test the response code to see if it's 301 or 302, right? I have no idea what this operator is called, but it's like the regex match operator. I love it. I don't know if you used it. Yeah, and then you can just grab the location header. And I don't know if you know, but every like, it's called a statement, right? Every statement in Ruby returns, so you can actually set something equal to an if, right? So if it's not a code 301 or 302, it's going to be nil, right? So you should do a lot more of this, I feel like, if you don't already. To make the response, I decided I would use HTTP party, which is kind of nice because you just send a head request. If you don't know what a head request is, it's like a get but without the body. And I am now convinced that the nerds who made that wanted that to be a joke. Right? I'm serious. That's why they named it head, I'm sure. And so you just give it a URL to follow, so whatever the original URL, right, the short URL is. And I told it not to follow redirects, because if you tell HTTP party to do that, like by default, then it'll actually go to the endpoint and not, help you like I want to. And I take the response and look at it, just like we did before. So you should always make things in the classes so you can reuse them, right? So I just decided you can initialize with the original URL, right? And I figured since there might be more than one redirect in a chain, I'd store an array. And then actually just have it have a fetch that will follow it and return itself, so that I can do .fetch exclamation .redirects. Right? If you return self, you can chain. So if you've ever used jQuery, that would make a lot of sense. And if you haven't used jQuery, you're probably thinking I'm crazy. But I love the chain methods, so that's nice. But this again only goes to the first, right? Or does it? Yeah, it only goes to the first one, right? So we should follow all of them. So for that, we need recursion, right? So we just make a new class with whatever that last redirect was and fetch it and get its redirects and concat those with the redirects we have, which is great. And I don't know if you know what this really is doing, but it's doing this. You're concatenating an array that's concatenating an array and ends up being an array. Sorry, it's just really okay, whatever. Yeah, so that's what that does, right? You're just getting arrays and concatenating. Right? So it's weird because you always start from one thing in an array, but you end up with a bunch. So either way, I like that. I don't know. So Sinatra has a splat route, just kind of like Ruby methods have the splat operator. So if you do /*, it puts them in param splat, right? And it separates them by slashes. So I join them back by slashes because I want the whole thing to be typed after u. So you could do u/http:// right, and put a whole URL there. It'll actually find it. If you don't give it, it throws a 404, right? Be good citizen, right? 404 is the status code of HTTP, right? Okay. Yeah, and then it does the new class and fetches it and then renders an ERB template, right? And something you should know about Heroku is they run varnish, so you can have this cached, right? You can cache it for a week just by doing that. And when varnish sees that expires header in the response, it'll actually keep it in varnish, which means that the next time somebody goes to that same URL, it's not even going to hit my Sinatra app. It's going to hit varnish first and respond. Right? So Heroku's doing that for you again for free, which is amazing. So you could actually, like this app can actually take a pretty good beating after it's been requested once for free. Okay. Oh yeah, and I don't know if you know, there's a heart, and he had a heart in his. I felt really betrayed because I thought I was going to have the heart, but okay. So we need a UI, right? So you want to show that you provide a URL and then loop over the redirects and blah, 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 right? So we can use partials and templates. We know how to do that, right? Cool. We can use this right now. It's on Heroku for free. It's unfurler.heroku.com, right? You can use it. You can type in a short URL and it'll follow it and tell you where it goes. And actually, this gist is actually the code that has been pushed to Heroku. I didn't even do a GitHub repository. I have a gist, right? And you can actually go through the history and look. And I actually have done some editing of the gist in the web interface on my iPad. And then when I got home, I pushed it. So I don't know if you know, there's a lot of tools nowadays to do code anywhere. But yeah, so this gist, you can fork it if you want. I don't know if you know you can fork gist, which you can. And you can edit it and do whatever you want. But yeah, this gist is actually running that website, which I don't know, I think it's hilarious. It doesn't even make sense. But there's actually 4 files on the gist, which doesn't make sense because I'm all talking about putting everything in the config.ru. And part of that is because of this new thing we have called bundler, which is great. It's necessary for Heroku. If you want the Sinatra gem, you have to have a thing to specify it, right? And also I added an API to this website so you can get JSON back. So I needed the JSON gem for that. And you can look at that in the gist. And then I added a README as well. And I don't know if you know about bundler, but there's a gem file, gemfile.lock now, so that's 2. And then I got a README, that's 1. I actually got my config.ru, which is a 4th. So I have 4 files. I didn't mean to let you down, but I want to have a README so you know what to do. So if you have fun with Sinatra, you should know how to use it now, obviously, because I told you. Yeah, but hey, some tips, some things that took me a while to figure out, is there are a lot of things we take for granted outside, like in Rails and stuff. Sinatra doesn't respond to a form that has that underscore method thing by default, right? Because that's not right. Like you're faking a put, and so Sinatra is very pure, so they only respond to real puts. But they added this thing you can enable called method override, which lets you do a hidden input that's underscore method as the name and the value can be put, right? And it'll fake it for you. So you can do it if you want. If you use static, it'll set up rack static on there to serve from your public folder, right? Sessions does cookie sessions by default for you, which is really nice. And then logging, it actually doesn't do any logging by default either, so you set that up too. And then you might want to use rack flash, which is like flash notice and stuff like that. That's not in there either. So, but this rack thing does it for you. So, yeah. So some things you might miss. Also, there's no like built-in way to escape HTML, but there's this thing called rack utils in rack, right? Which has a way to do it called escape HTML. But I like typing H, so I just alias it.
Oh yeah.
Right? And then there you go. So, but if you're using eRubus, it actually now by default escapes HTML if you tell it that when you set it up. So if you're using ERB, which I just use Haml, but you can set up eRubus to do like what Rails 3, is it 3 or 3.1? I don't remember, but one of the Rails is, like escapes HTML by default, and so all your developers have to have raw now, which was great. I love that. Yeah. There's also this thing called Sinatra Base, which actually is what Sinatra application inherits from. Sinatra Base allows you to make a class where you have all your Sinatra stuff in it instead of having it right in the root of the file. And this is really cool because you can actually have multiple Sinatra classes, right? And if you know anything about Rack, you can mount classes at different endpoints. So you can mount a blog class at /blog, and you can mount a wiki class at /wiki, and then you could run something at the default /, right? And you can have them all as gems, right? Because gems are just a require, which requires a Ruby file which has a class in it. So you can actually publish a wiki gem that someone could require and then mount, and they could do 3 requires, 3 mounts, and have a whole website, right, with CMS or whatever. Right? You can do this with Rails as well. But yeah, so you just have to run that class now instead of a Sinatra application, right? So that's all you're doing. But it allows you to basically share your Sinatra application a lot easier. Because with the regular Sinatra application class, there can only be one. It's like Highlander. If you want a database layer, you should try out DataMapper, probably because you either haven't or you haven't enough. DataMapper is really cool. I really like it because you declare your properties right there. And also, DataMapper isn't actually only for databases. I wrote an IMAP Gmail adapter, right? So I could just check emails and stuff. It's crazy. You can actually create an email. I don't know if you know, but IMAP has a way to like create emails. It's really crazy. But yeah, you can actually have DataMapper that reads XML files, all sort of things. And so if you're wanting to build some sort of website that doesn't run off a regular database, you might want to look into DataMapper because there might be an adapter for the thing you want to do.
And so you could build like a nice API that serves JSON for your blog. Instead of sending people a nice web page, you can just send them JSON. Right? And so you can just get all the posts and send the JSON. And there's actually this DataMapper gem called DM Serializer, which is really smart because it looks at your declared properties and sets up a 2JSON that actually sends those out for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Yeah, and then you can actually accept a post, right? Now, if a post is saved, you should probably send a 201, which means it was created, right? So you should do that, because sending a 200 just means it was okay. That's not good enough. It needs to be created, right? If it wasn't created, you can send a 422 and send back maybe an errors or something like that. So, either way, you'll notice I have an if here that at the end of it is a 2JSON. And since this if is the last statement in the block, that's what will be returned, right? Which means that's what's going to get sent to the browser. Yeah. Does that make sense? Again, Snatchers is very Ruby-ish, right? It's not so much Rails-ish. It's a lot more Ruby-ish. So that's why you should use it. And he actually said, do you like working on stuff that you don't get paid for? And yeah, I do actually, because that's usually fun. Although, my new job is really fun. I guess I'm not trying to be, well, maybe a little bit, but it actually has been pretty good so far. But that's because I haven't really done much. But I've actually been incredibly busy. But yeah, I've been working so hard. Yeah, no, you should actually, you should work on this stuff. I feel like the things I've worked on that I haven't gotten paid for have enabled me to get better jobs. Does that make sense? So, I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. Cool, so you want to send emails, can't do that with Sinatra, right? There's a thing called Pony, which is the best name ever. You can Pony mail it, right? It actually has attachment support and everything, it's crazy. So you can use Pony to send emails, right? Which is great. So you actually could create a REST API to send and receive emails by using the DataMapper mapper, right? So you can chat with DataMapper, you can send Pony, you can actually create a REST API for your mail account. I don't know why you do that. But I kind of wish like email was over REST, right? Because then I could like script it better. I feel like I know. Either way, just so you know, Pony can be pre-configured with all your options, and this is how you do Gmail. You have to do a special port, you have to tell it to do TLS. Gmail really wants that. But yeah, you can set up Pony to like know this ahead of time. That way you just do Pony mail and you just give it a body and a subject. Right. Does that make sense? It's pretty quiet. Okay, so there's that %W I was talking about. You should never repeat yourself. So just take an array and use that to build 3 routes. Right? Yeah. So I actually did this in the routes file in an app I'm working at. So I'm sure somebody's gonna be very sad whenever they see it. But yeah. So I love like looping over something and using that. And it's even better if you can somehow find a way to use define method in it, right? Because I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And here I'm using Haml. So actually, if you include the Haml gem, then that Haml method like shows up in your Sinatra app, so you're really good. They actually have a CoffeeScript one, a SAS one. They have all the different little things you want to render. So and you can render as many times as you want. Doesn't matter. So does that make sense to everybody? So something else you should watch out for is Sinatra is very, very literal. If you say /pages, you can't go to /pages/. Right? But if you put this / question mark at the end of the route, that means that last question mark is optional. Does that make sense? So then it would activate both routes. But Sinatra is very literal. You have to tell it exactly what you want. You can do regex routes, which is great. And actually, what's really, I actually don't know how this works, but your captures get sent in as block variables, right? But that's pretty cool. So yeah, so this is actually what my blog used to be. I just moved it to Tumblr because I got really tired. I actually wrote a Sinatra app and hosted it on DreamHost just to see if I could, and it worked. But managing gems on DreamHost is just not something. So either way, this is actually what my blog did use to be able to build routes like year-month slug and things like that. I could do year-month and show all the ones in that month, or year and show the ones in that year. DataMapper is cool because your queries can be expressive. This is using DataMapper, and you can say where the created at year is greater than or equal to the year, right? Things like that. So it's nice queries. Although the new Rails 3 stuff is pretty good too, right? Okay, some ideas for you. You can make an app that is just an index.html with a bunch of JavaScript, right? And then you can just have a bunch of Sinatra endpoints that return JSON, right? And that could be your only file. You know, you could have an index and a config.ru, and you're done. Right, you can have a whole site. You can make a blog like I did. I think if you haven't made a blog yet, you should. You'd be surprised how many things your mind has to solve when you're building a blog.
It's like a one file.
There's a what?
There's a one file.
Yeah, you should make a one
Sinatra
file.
blog. Well, there's
Yeah.
one called Scanty.
Oh, there you go. Scanty. Go look up Scanty and then write one that's better. Although I like that name, so you're probably not gonna help do that. I was actually my blog. I wrote this engine that I can throw text at it and it figures out what it is. You know how Tumblr, like you can have like an image or an article or a link, right? I would just throw it like from TextMate. I would just have it post to my site, just a block of text, and it would like figure out what it is. But it doesn't work very well. But I really want somebody to do that, to actually make a content recognition and sorting app, so that you could just throw it something, like even if you threw it the bytes of a JPEG, like it would know that, and it would like serve that publicly. Does that make sense to anyone? I could be crazy, but I really want that. I think that'd be really cool. Like you could even make a little menu bar app on the Mac. You could drag a file to it, and it would just like serve it, right? And it would just figure out what it is and all that stuff. You can test that in your database, right? You could just have like one file open, just require your database libraries and create a couple actions and just see how they work, right? And that's really easy to do. And you can create really cool mobile sites very easily, right? Because you can have it all in one file. It's just, I find that to be a little easier because if it's in one file, you're not going to write so much code because you're afraid of like making the file long and you have to scroll. And it actually kind of helps. You'd be surprised. Okay, well that's it. I have no idea how long I talked. There you go. So you can Google me, and I come up on Google. There's this other Nathan Herald who's like creeping up on me. I used to own the whole first 10, and he just hit me up on Google Plus yesterday, and I was like, I just want to be like, I hate you. I gotta be nice. But he was like, hey, I'm on Google.
Tell him to be Nate.
I know. I'm like, man, he's like Nathan Herald. But yeah. So I'm not in Colorado. But yeah, so you can look at my. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please. Why didn't you ask
So
earlier?
the latency and like for I guess traps or something like that, where it's looping to the URL.
Oh yeah.
So what happens?
You'd be surprised how fast it is. You can test it out. It's live.
It's not a matter of how fast it is. I mean, some sites just never respond.
Oh yeah, no. HTTP Party has default timeout,
Okay.
and you can override that as well. But you'd be surprised, like most, because I'm doing a head request, and so it doesn't actually have to generate any HTML or anything. So you'd be surprised how. The internet is amazing that it works at all, and it works pretty well.
I've crawled through sites.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, crawling can be a problem. I do find the head request, as long as the server actually knows what to do, I think that it works out really well, because it just returns headers. And most of the short URL sites they want to be fast, you know, so I picked a good problem to solve, right? But I didn't have that. But it's also Heroku's problem, not mine. And it's free.
So Bitly letting it Bitly shorten? Can you shorten the Bitly?
Yeah, just try it out.
I know, well, you should make a furler.
Oh, you mean make something that
Yeah,
does?
so
No, that's the opposite of what I did.
I said, I know you should make
Oh.
a counterpart. You just
No,
send
someone
a
else
link
should.
and I'll send it a link and it makes like, you need a number and it takes like a 10 depth Bitly.
Oh, I've seen I've seen a URL longer, like it makes like an Amazon looking URL for it. It really it looks just like this, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, you really should try it out. I mean, it's pretty, you could use the Bitly URL that you have if you remember it. Yeah. Bitly. Did anyone remember it all? No one wrote it down. What is it?
Bitly/other code.
Other code. So yeah, where does that go? Anyone can find out. I love how like you ask a question and just, I mean I was like that too. Yeah, it's different when you're up here though. You're like, come on guys. And, no. Okay. Yeah, any other questions? What do you got?
Yeah, just while we're on the topic of calling things, how much does Heroku cost?
It's free.
Oh.
Actually, Heroku can be expensive. I don't know if you've looked at it, but if you need background processing, then you're at least $20 a month for just one of those. Yeah. Well, it's expensive. I feel like it's expensive after you get like mildly popular.
Well, SSL
for like a small, SSL, but that's just the nature of what they're doing. But yeah, like it's pretty good up until you get about like 6 processes, and then I feel like you're better off either learning how to do hosting yourself or finding someone better to provide or hiring a sysops guy. But and their database stuff is often expensive as well. Does anybody else have any questions? None? Oh wait, hold on. Hold on. So,
how do we convince Living Social to use DataMapper?
DataMapper? Well, I mean, you know, you can't do. I don't know. DataMapper incredibly useful, especially if you want to make like read-only apps too. Like maybe there's another app that's writing the database and you're just making like an API, right? Like DataMapper is great because what field names you choose and what field names are in a database don't have to be the same. You know, it's not like active record. And you don't have to use them all. Whatever properties you declare are the only ones you can get to, right? So you don't have to declare all of them, you can just declare the ones you need. And you can actually have multiple database types in your applications. You can have an IMAP, and a MySQL, Mongo, and all these different things. And they'll all, you can actually have models that relate to models on opposite repository types and things like that. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, the new version of DataMapper that's going to come out has a relational algebra engine that's really amazing because you can actually just take two query objects and or them or and them, and it'll actually figure out what that should be. And I really like that. I find that to be very difficult. You guys have any questions? Okay, well, I'm done talking.
All right, I'd like to thank again our presenters. Another round of applause for Dane, Jim, and Nathan. Thank you to Logic for hosting and Tridia for sponsoring. I hope you guys all had a good time this evening. It does not have to end now. We're going to head over in groups to RFD. In groups because I don't think we can fit everyone in that elevator. Other basket passing. There are a few slices of pizzas and some left if you want to grab that too. But otherwise, we meet the second Thursday of every month. I hope you guys will come out when you can, and I hope some of you will also think about possible presentations that you'd like to give in the future. That's a big part of what keeps this group going. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and have a good evening.